What we are saying to the Prime Minister, when he went to Beijing and met with the Chinese delegation, the demonstrations in the United States of America, but you can see with a student from supporting Tibet and a Chinese representative, a Chinese woman who knew nothing about what the situation is. She's defending China's right, and the Chinese government is saying to Australia and the rest of the world, clearly get it understood, America's no friend. You know, the Chinese have got a very short memory. China has a very short memory. America opposed the recognition of the Chinese Communist Party in the United Nations. China, I do wish you'd get your homework correct. But when China says, listen to this, China says it's none of our business, mind your business, don't talk about Tibet, and go home like a school child, go home.
Excuse me.
Question.
Ronda, excuse me.
I told you. What I do out here is...
Excuse me.
The Chinese government said for Australia to mind its own business. Well, the answer to this, China, is this.
Question here.
And listen to this carefully, Alan, instead of obstructing the argument.
Shut up first.
When the Chinese government said
It's a question.
to Australia, can I finish?
What are you talking about?
You won't allow the argument to continue. Then you'll know what it's about. We are not condemning the Chinese people. We are condemning the Communist Party of China in Beijing. We are referring to human rights.
That's right.
The question in Tibet is human rights. The recognition of Tibet.
If you don't like what
The recognition of Tibet.
go away.
China is saying to us,
Right.
they've got as much right as anybody to come here. Listen,
Huh?
whether you
Right behind
disagree or disagree, you have a right. In opposition, everyone has a right to come here. We'll get that quite clear.
She's a queer old chap. You can't say what you want.
Right? I'm just saying, no, Alan, you're trying to stir the pot. Stir in the pot, Alan, and you know what I'm getting at. What I'm saying is, then, Alan, you can have your reply. The Chinese government said to Australia quite plainly and to the rest of the world, human rights. Politics should not interfere in the Olympic Games. 1956, let's start with the Olympic Games. 1956, the invasion of Hungary by Soviet Russia, with Russian tanks in Hungary, in Budapest. This is the Olympic Games. Politics shouldn't interfere. 1956, Russian tanks went into Hungarian Budapest. Germany, the terrorists from Palestine with the Jewish question. Then we go to Russia. When Russia had the Games, America boycotted the United States of America. The Black Hand, the race of the African, gave the insignia like this when they stood in the United States of Black Power. Again, politics interfered. China turns around and says that they have a right. You know very well what is going to happen when the Chinese come to Australia with the Olympic torch. I'd be a lie if I said nothing was going to happen. You certainly don't think they're going to speak Mandarin at Karabili or Government House with the Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. They're not going to have a Chinese tea party. The flag of Tibet, which this is, and by the way,
Needs a bit of work there.
flying the flag of Tibet is a criminal offence. If you flew this flag in Beijing or in China, you'd be arrested. It is against the law to have a country which is not recognised by the Chinese government. However, China told Australia, remember, listen, Alan, don't try and make out that you're a Chinese supporter, because I remember when America, the country you support, opposed the recognition of Communist China. You know, let's get down to politics. The American government are no friend of China. No friend of China. The Communist Party of China was founded in Shanghai. Shanghai. Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao, General Chiang Kai-shek of Taiwan, Dr. Sun Yat-sen. I don't know what I'm talking about with China. China has a very short memory, and what we're saying to China, human rights is not going to be abused. The Olympic Games means this, that everyone is recognised. And when China is abusing human rights, China is a target. The Chinese government is a target when they deny the recognition of Tibet. This is the argument. The Tibetan government have a right to be recognised. This is not China. This is Australia, and China is going to pay the price in America, the United Kingdom, and America are no friend of the Chinese. They tried to ban China. People like us stood when China, they are trying to lecture. You weren't even born when the Red Guard were marching in Beijing. You may be Chinese, but you are not marching against the recognition. China has two countries. Taiwan. What about Formosa? What about the nationalists led by Dr. Sun Yat-sen, Chiang Kai-shek in Taiwan? What about the nationalists, the Kuomintang, which are Chinese, they're not Tibetan, they are Chinese, living in Taiwan, Formosa. You know very well what I'm saying. And when you talk about America, remember, the Americans were against China. They nearly started the war in Korea. Do your history. You were not even born in Nanking. In Nanking, the Japanese murdered thousands of Chinese in Nanking. Shanghai was the capital of China before Beijing. I may not be of Chinese descent. You can say to me, but I'm not Chinese. You can say that.
He's got on his shirt, we are brothers and sisters.
What's Santa Claus doing back here?
There you go.
I'm saying, and I'm not denying the right, but you cannot deny Tibet. Manchuria was not part of China. The Japanese ruled Manchuria. During the war, the Japanese occupied because China was the first country to be attacked. But China is saying that politics shouldn't interfere in the Olympic Games. 1956, the Hungarian uprising, and everywhere else.
Australian history.
Yes, and we know Chinese history too. We know that China stood alone, that the Japanese were bombing your country and committed genocide in Nanking. Is that a lie? Is that a lie? And we weren't speaking Mandarin and we weren't speaking Cantonese. We're telling you what is history. Dr. Sun Yat-sen, Chiang Kai-shek fled the mainland after the Communist Army under Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai ordered him to leave the country. The Communist Party of China. They don't like it. They're used to being told by the Communist Party of China what to do. We have a democracy, what is left in Australia. Australia has a democracy, and we're not going to be told by the Australian government, this flag will not fly. This is the flag of Tibet. This is the flag of Tibet. And the Chinese said, and I'll tell you what the Chinese delegation said in the streets of San Francisco, no, we didn't say that it's racist. This is a political argument. You know this as well as we do. If the Chinese are allowed to say, well, politics shouldn't interfere with the games, what they are saying to the rest of the world, what about Beijing, that the tanks were ordered by the Chinese government to take the tanks into Beijing, and a democracy student, what about the student? What about the student? What about the university student? No. It is not directed as a racist argument. You said it, trying to say we're racist. We're dealing with the political system of it because most Chinese people are divided on this question. Now, you see, they're saying that we're racist. We are not racist. We're saying that China is wrong on the question of human rights. And this is a democratic democracy, and we speak for all people. Democracy is not a heart which is seduced with the barrel of a gun. Democracy believes in freedom of speech, but China doesn't tell this country what to do. We make our own laws, and in this country we recognise Tibet's right to exist as a country. Tibet is Tibet. This is the national flag of Tibet. You've seen the demonstrations led by the Tibetan and the people who are protesting. The Dalai Lama is a leader of the Buddhist monks. He has protested passive resistance, non-violence. They are the teaching of the Buddhist monks. Remember the teacher of Buddhism or Hindu, that they are Buddhist. Passive. Anyway, as far as the argument of Tibet is concerned, I've said to you what most Australian people are saying. The demonstrations will take place here in Melbourne. Thousands of demonstrators are coming into the streets in Canberra. And as I said before, if Mr. Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister of Australia, who went over to America and did this, he shouldn't have done it. Saluting America, who's running it? America is the boss. You don't do that, an Australian Prime Minister to do that. How stupid. With his qualifications as an intellectual, the Prime Minister of Australia, the head of this country, salutes the American President. You know, where's our own independence? The Prime Minister went to London. The British government are remaining neutral. Listen to the British. Oh, we don't want to come into it. Why? Why don't they want to come into it? Thousands of Tibetans are living in this country today, and they are frightened to demonstrate because they're being bullied. But the issue is made quite clear to Tibet. This is a constituted Commonwealth democracy, and everyone has the right to protest, whether it's for or against. Anyway, someone else wants to have something here to say.